Greetings and welcome to the WGBH News Facebook page. I'm Joe Mathieu, the host of WGBH's Morning Edition, and I'm joined today by Boston Mayor Marty Walsh on what has turned into a very important day in the way the city is handling the coronavirus pandemic. Mr. Mayor, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me today, Joe.
I love the view from the office. We just heard from Governor Baker that public schools will remain closed the rest of the year. You were involved in making that decision?
Yeah, we talked to the governor along with other mayors and superintendents around the Commonwealth. You know, it's the right decision to make. We're still in the midst of this pandemic, and there's still too many people testing positive for coronavirus. And we're still really, at least in Boston, in the mode of social isolation, physical distancing. And I don't know how practical it would have been to have school come back this year. It was a nice idea, but practicality was not happening.
Well, it's good to know at last so parents can plan. I wonder if you have concerns about young people just kind of drifting into summer, or even high school seniors who will not have the touchstone of a graduation or a prom before they head to college. What does that do to the psyche of a young person?
Yeah, certainly it's concerning, but at least we know now it's definite, and now we can plan accordingly. We can start thinking about how do we continue our online learning, and how do we start transitioning into the summer and summer learning where it needs to happen. I think there's going to be many questions that need to be asked about what happens to kids moving up from 11th and 10th and 9th grade into the next grade. Schools have been closed now for the month of March, April, May, June. So that's 4 months of schooling that kids won't have. And then you're going to add a couple more summer months on there. So it's really half a year the kids are not going to be actually learning in a classroom. So it's going to have an effect, and it's going to be incumbent upon all of us to come up with some good, strong, sound policy and implementation of how do we move our kids forward.
You mentioned, Mayor, in your daily briefing that things might look different when students go back to school. Do you have a sense of what parents and students should prepare for, what it might look like?
I mean, I think that potentially wearing masks in school, potentially temperature checks. I mean, all this stuff is still on the table. To go back to the issue we're talking about is we don't have enough data right now to be able to make some of these decisions that we want to make. We really need to get universal testing. We need to get more testing capability. The city's we're trying to find our own testing to be able to mass test the city. But until those tests and that materials come our way, we're kind of taking a day at a time here.
I spoke this morning on Morning Edition with General Jack Hammond, who had some very nice things to say about you. And we were talking about the field hospital that he's helped to organize at the Boston Convention Center. It appears to be working, Mayor, as planned. We're not overflowing local ICUs, and people are filing into and being, in some cases, discharged from the convention center.
Well, I'm glad we were able to build it. It was built in 5 days. A lot of great collaboration there. 2 days after it was built, we had guests there from the hospital side and the homeless guests on the other side. Right now I think we have nearly 200 people in there between both sides, and certainly it is helping us with our capacity as we continue in the surge here with more cases and more reasons to be hospitalized. Having that facility is vital to making sure that our hospital system doesn't get overwhelmed, at least in Eastern Mass. I know we have two more of them. There are two more around the Commonwealth. There's one in Worcester, and there's one out in the Springfield area. And those facilities are up and running as well. So it was good work all around to get those facilities up and running.
I know that you've been trying to drive home a lot of messaging lately, people to cover their faces, to not gather in groups. And we've seen when the weather starts to get nice, people sometimes do start playing games and filling parks and so forth. I just took a walk down the VFW Parkway, and I made a stop quickly to get some takeout lunch. The vast majority of people around me were not wearing masks, and I was kind of surprised to see it. Would you consider mandating that people wear them?
We're having conversations about that. I mean, the issue is going to be on enforcement. And again, I get asked this question all the time, whether it's gathering in parks or people playing golf on Saturday or soccer.
Right.
I mean, it really is incumbent upon us as citizens of the city to be disciplined in this area. You're putting yourself in harm's way. You're putting other family members at risk. You're putting older people at risk, but by potentially contracting the virus and then taking it into your home. Not having masks or not having a face covering, I just don't understand it at this point. A lot of people are wearing it, and I'm very happy for that. And I want to thank them for that. But it is about your own protection. I mean, people are losing their life because of coronavirus, and let's not, assume here for a minute that the potential of catching it and having it damaging consequences on individuals is not out of the realm of possibility.
I'll tell you, Mr. Mayor, I'm one of the lucky beneficiaries of the Boston Area Mask Initiative, which I heard about from you.
Yeah.
And City Councilor Anesia Saibi George sent over a really cool Boston Marathon mask, and I've been wearing it with pride. So I want you to know that.
No, it's great. And I did a video yesterday here. I think it's posted now about how to make a mask out of a t-shirt and simply two rubber bands. And I just think people need to start being more careful when they go out. And making sure they protect themselves. I mean, we're seeing these numbers. Yesterday, we had 233 additional cases of coronavirus positives in Boston, and over the last 14 days, those numbers have been triple digits, and in 200-300 each of those days. So it's important that we stop the spread of the virus and do everything we can to stop it.
Mayor, several states, as I'm sure you've seen, most of them down south, are talking about reopening, so-called reopening in the coming days. The president keeps calling for America to reopen, as he says. Are we living in another world here in Massachusetts? What do you make of that kind of rhetoric?
It's not simply reopening. I mean, I think we all want to get to reopening. We all want to go back to what we understand as normalcy, but it's going to be a long time before we even get there. Even when some of our industries do open here in Boston and Massachusetts, it's not going to be consistently across the board. And we also have to be careful of a second surge, and it could be more damaging than the first one. And it's something that, until there's a vaccine or some type of medicine that you can take to cure the coronavirus, we have to be very careful. I mean, I was talking to somebody today. They were talking about, most of the deaths have been older people, and that's true. But there's still premature deaths, and their family and loved ones, and you can't be with them in their last hours, and it's really complicated for people. And I think that thinking about reopening is going to be It's going to be a different type of society, at least for a while, that we live in. And I think that I saw down the south, I think in Georgia, opening up gyms and workout clubs, and bringing back all kinds of different amenities that really aren't about keeping your economy moving forward. I think it's very dangerous. And I know there are mayors in Georgia that are pushing back a bit on it, and they don't agree with them. And I think that, as far as any leaders getting pressure about reopening, I appreciate that, because we all are. But it's about keeping your residents safe and keeping them alive. And that's what you have to put first and foremost. And at the end of the day, you will not get criticized for that.
We've seen some other countries, China, South Korea, more recently Italy, have launched massive disinfection, sanitation efforts in some of their bigger cities, trucks spraying down the streets. Is that something that's been considered in Boston?
Yeah, I mean, something we're going to have to look at. But one thing that those cities did was completely shut down. And a lot of those places shut down, 24 hours a day, except to go out for essential items. And they didn't have people gathering and walking. They shut museums down. They shut religious sites down. They shut everything down. And, we didn't get to a full shutdown here in America. We got to, every state did something a little different. In Boston, we did this. In Massachusetts, we did a stay-at-home advisory, which is still in effect. New York did the similar things and shut down there. There aren't as many people on the streets of the cities, but what's happening in the neighborhoods, there are a lot of people still gathering, and that can't happen. I mean, if we truly want to get through this, we need to make sure that we do everything we can to stop the spread of the virus. In Wuhan, China, it was 92 days from the first case until they had the first day without somebody testing positive. 92 days. Wow. Yeah. That's 3 months. We're not near that right now.
Is your biggest concern complacency then?
A little bit of complacency and not taking this serious. I keep hearing this, so people keep comparing this to the common flu. In the common flu, we don't shut down society. So if we did, you'd have fewer deaths with the common flu, with the same with coronavirus. If we didn't take the actions that as early as we did, we would, I think, going to be in a far worse situation. If we go back too early to the way we know it, we'll be in a bad situation as well. So it really is about balancing it and how do we move forward. And then we also have to look at the testing is key, because the testing will allow us the opportunity to see, who might have tested positive for coronavirus, who currently has coronavirus. So when we bring back society, the vulnerable populations can be protected to some degree. It's important for us to think about that. A lot of people that work in the workforce are over the age of 62, 63, and they have health issues because they have to work. So we have to think about how do we put them back into the society and put them at risk for getting the coronavirus, even when we go back to work, because the coronavirus will still be here.
Well, I know we still have a lot to learn. We have a lot to live through, Mr. Mayor, but I want to thank you for the daily briefings. The information has been, I think, really helpful to the city. And I want to thank you for spending some time with us on a really busy day here on WGBH.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks for the great news you're doing and covering it and covering the press conferences. And I've told people all the time that if you're going to get news, make sure you go to a trusted source. WGBH is one of those trusted sources that will give accurate news, and be careful what you're seeing, what you're hearing, because right now every story matters and every story counts.
True enough. We'll look for your next update, sir. Thanks for the latest on schools, and we hope to talk to you soon. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Joe. Bye.